States' rights. It's been a big belief of mine that the power and control of our government belonged and is held by the states. One of the biggest contentions when they were trying to get the Constitution, get it signed, get it enacted, and create the federal government was the role of the states. One of the major contentions was during the debates. You can read all the articles that were written in the Pennsylvania New York paper. It was a huge source of contention with regards to states' rights. The Anti-Federalists were really scared and concerned about the federal government becoming basically another monarchy, to having total control. The Federalists were basically stating no, the federal government will have small, limited powers, basically from our borders out, etc., and that the individual sovereign state governments would be the ones controlling or having the power, if you will, within the borders of the United States. So that's the basics of it. Fast forward a couple hundred years to COVID-19. You know my take on this whole thing, so I'm going to try to avoid that. But I'm looking at and watching and reading about what's happening in a lot of the states in the United States. I spoke to my dad the other day. He lives up in Indiana, and basically in the county that he lives in, if you're out driving around in your personal vehicle and you don't have an essentials employee, show me your papers type paper, it's like a $15,000 fine. There was a lady in Pennsylvania who was out for a drive. She had to get out of the house. She was driving down the road. She got pulled over and ticketed because she was conducting a non-essential activity. Out in California, Riverdale, Riverside, if you're out and about and not wearing a mask, which has been mandated, it's a $1,000 fine. And it just goes and goes and goes. But these are the individual states that are enacting these measures and these fines, and I have to rethink this. There's a big contention of people that believe we fought the Civil War over states' rights, that it wasn't exactly slavery. Slavery was the way of the industrial North to take away the free labor of the South because they wanted the money that the South was making on their exports of cotton. They couldn't do it. The South said, screw you, we're leaving. So North said, okay, we're going to take away your slaves. That's kind of the basic argument. So to a big contingent of people, the Civil War was fought over states' rights and not over slavery. I've been a big believer in states' rights. States should be the ones that corral, control, contain, and keep a power-zealous federal government from getting out of control. And then I look and see what's going on. I see these governors, mayors, councilmen. The one in Montana, I forget the name again, sorry, but door knocking because they see strange cars in people's driveways. It's small towns, so they know who lives where, what kind of cars they have, that kind of stuff. They see strange cars in a driveway and they're door knocking, hey, who's here? They're making random phone calls to their citizens, hey, who's at your house? What have we become? Each state has its own constitution. The 10th Amendment to the Constitution basically says if it's not written in the Constitution, that power belongs to the people and the state. So here we are with governors instituting some just crazy, insane, asinine policies and rules and restrictions. So I have to rethink this whole states' rights thing. Who really holds the power? So you have to, you have to travel down different lanes of thought about this. Are they only doing it to keep favor of the federal government so they don't potentially lose any funding? Are they doing it just to put up a brave face for their citizens so it looks like they're doing something so they can win the next election? Currently, as of the 10th of April 2020, there's only 8 states in the United States that haven't implemented the shelter in place or the stay at home or whatever you want to call it orders. That's Arkansas, Iowa, Nebraska, North and South Dakota, Oklahoma, South Carolina, and Utah. Every one of them ran by a Republican governor and or a Republican-controlled Congress at the state level. Okay, but that leaves 42 other states, plus the other territories we have, that have all instituted these ridiculous, unnecessary, ineffective stay-at-home orders. And it's even beyond just the stay-at-home. It's the sending the police out to lock down beaches. It's sending the police to people's homes because there's more than 10 people there. It's all this other stuff that's going on. What are we doing? I'm a constitutionalist from day one. I'm a firm believer in what the Constitution says. If it's not mentioned in the Constitution, it's not a federal government issue. Abortion being a prime example, that's a state issue. Marriages, state issue. Driver's license, state issue. Everything that's not in the expressed, or anything that's not expressly written in the Constitution, expressly granting a power to the federal government, that's controlled and held by the state. Federal government should not be involved in any of our social issues. That's the power of the state. Federal government shouldn't be involved in education. That's a state level. Federal government shouldn't be involved in welfare. That's a state issue. That's how I've always been, how I've always perceived and always thought about the states' rights or the delineation between where the federal government power ends and state power begins. But now you have 2 people at the federal government level that are not even elected officials. They're appointed, Fauci and Burks, talking about these things. The federal government hasn't mandated or made it or required these shelter-in-place things. They've been recommendations, they've been guidelines. These governors and mayors and everything took it upon themselves to institute them. So it's not the federal government doing it to our people. It's our own state governments doing it to our people. Are they acting in bad faith? We see what effect this has. People aren't doing anything. Businesses are shut down and all the other crap that's going along with it. The whole essential, non-essential business and all the other stuff that's going with it. 16 million people now unemployed across the country. But it's the governors. The governors are the ones that can say, we're not doing this. Everyone is essential. Every one of these businesses are essential. We're staying open. And the governor of the state has the power to do that. They've chosen not to. It's gotten so bad. Home Depot, forgive me, I can't remember the state right now, just went through their store and they're not allowed to sell certain items like mulch in their store. Their store's open. They're still selling other what's been deemed essential items, but they can't sell like mulch. Apparently, mulching your garden and your lawn is not an essential activity. You don't need to be doing that right now. That is a rule being enacted by a state, not a federal government. It makes you think, doesn't it? It does me. As a proponent of states' rights, and always have been, and probably will continue to be so, what have we allowed these states to do? Again, it's not the federal government. It's not Trump. It's not Pelosi. It's not Schumer. It's not Mitch McConnell. It's none of them that are mandating that Home Depot can't sell mulch. It's the governors, it's the city mayors, it's the state legislature that's doing this. And then we have the state law enforcement agencies that are backing it. Okay, they're in a catch-22. They're being told to do it, and if they tell them to pack sand, well, obviously with the exception of the duly elected sheriff, but what? Where are we? What are we? This is not the United States of America as it was ever envisioned by the creators of this country. The people that fought and died, lost their fortunes, lost family, had their fortunes burned, their mansions burned, or their houses burned and bombed when the British, or by the British during the Civil War. This is not what they had in mind. The last straw of the Revolutionary War was the 3% tax on tea. But here we are, sitting here in our homes, waiting for somebody to give us permission to leave. Here we are, sitting in our homes, afraid to go to a trail and go hiking because they're going to be flying a drone overhead telling us that we're violating some non-essential rule and be fined and arrested. And they're getting, here's another thing that's happening, is they're getting these, or issuing these notice to appears, or a court summons. That's an actual arrest. That is a record. That is an arrest record for the individual handed the NTA. They're not cuffed and stuffed and sent to jail that day, but they're still arrested. And if you don't show up to a court, now you have a notice or a failure to appear. You can also be held in contempt, which could be 2 additional charges now against you. Then they will send the police with a bench warrant to pull your ass back to fucking jail. But here we are sitting here waiting for somebody to give us permission to go enjoy the beach, to go to the national park and take a hike, to go to a campground and camp for a weekend. We can't have church services. We can't have church services. And it's Easter Sunday. I'm not a church guy. Just not particularly my thing. But anyway, you have a right to attend to the free practice of your religion. But they can't go because the governors said so. Help me. The founders of this country created a document which created the governance of this country. That document created the federal government, but put strict boundaries on it. Everything else that's not in that Constitution belongs to the states. And here we are, governors, mayors, city councilmen, telling us we can't go outside and play. What are we doing? Where are we? To me, right now, with everything that's going on, we're this uncontrolled ship lost at sea at night with no direction, no light, no heading, no bearing. I can't make sense of it. I just can't. I'm kind of at a loss. I really am.